Hi everyone, welcome to Anaheim Park Tourist. This is our first time visitor's guide to Disneyland, and this is part one. We'll be covering what airport in Southern California can you fly into and ground transportation from those airports to the Anaheim resort area or Disneyland. And first off, there are 6 airports that Disneyland states you can fly into, and those are Burbank, Ontario, LAX, Long Beach, John Wayne, and the furthest away will be San Diego. We'll go ahead and give you a little description about each airport and then talk more about ground transportation. First off is John Wayne and Long Beach. John Wayne is the closest airport to the Disneyland Resort, and it is 14 miles away, and it takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes to drive to Disneyland from John Wayne. And then Long Beach is next, and that is about 20 miles from Disneyland, and it takes roughly 30 to 45 minutes to get to Disneyland from Long Beach. What's nice about both these airports is that they're both fairly small, easy to get in and out of, and they are close to Disneyland.
Up next is Burbank Airport, and this airport is about 39 miles away, and we always factor in about 2 hours to drive from Burbank to Disneyland, and we've never gotten to Disneyland quicker than 2 hours. It usually always takes us right around 2 hours. Could take longer depending on traffic. Now Burbank is pretty darn small, and it doesn't really have a whole lot of food options, and the food options that it does have are really expensive. So on our last trip, we actually got dropped off at the airport, checked in our bags, and then we took a quick 5 to 7 minute walk to a nearby shopping center that's right next to the airport and has a ton of different food options and a Starbucks. So we ate there, and then we walked back and went through security to get ready for our flight. We like the food options there better in the shopping center.
Ontario is the next airport, and it is about 35 miles away, and Ontario is actually the only airport we have not flown into out of all 6 Southern California airports. We did have friends meet us in the Disneyland area a couple years ago. They flew from Florida to Ontario. They said they really liked the airport, and it was a real easy drive from Ontario to the Anaheim area and would recommend it.
LAX is about 35 miles from Disneyland, and we always factor in at least 2 hours to drive from LAX to the Anaheim area. And then if you're an international traveler, you'll most likely be flying into LAX. And customs, we would factor in another 2 hours at least for customs. So just keep that in mind. It would take about 4 hours if you have to go through customs and to drive to Disneyland. Our last 2 times flying into LAX, it actually only took us 45 minutes to get to the Anaheim area from LAX, and we were pleasantly surprised by that. That's pretty darn quick for Southern California.
And then we see this question asked a lot, and can you fly into San Diego and get to Disneyland? And of course you can. It is a little more difficult because there are not as many travel options. So if you are flying into San Diego, make sure you enjoy all the sights, especially the San Diego Zoo. It is awesome. Your options are to drive from San Diego to Disneyland or take Amtrak and get off at Arctic Station or Anaheim. And in 2019, I went ahead and I met a friend in San Diego and then hitched a ride with him to Disneyland. It took us about 2 hours from San Diego to the Disneyland Hotel. And I want to say if there is traffic, it's most likely going to take you a little bit longer to make that drive. Now that we've listed all the different airports and how far and how close they are to Disneyland, some things to consider. First off, LAX is probably going to be the cheapest option for you. So factor that in. For us, it tends to be Burbank. The most expensive options are going to be John Wayne and Long Beach because they are so close to Disneyland. When you are trip planning, factor in round trip transportation from the airport to Disneyland. So for example, if you can save $600, $700, $800 by flying into LAX, we most likely would choose to save that kind of money rather than flying to John Wayne. We like to save money, and we would either save that money for another trip or stay in a little bit of a nicer hotel. Now, if it was just slightly more expensive, we would definitely fly into one of the closer hotels. While you're factoring in the total cost of your trip, one thing that we always do is we prefer to fly nonstop, and that's why we tend to fly into Burbank or LAX. We have the most nonstop flights from our airport into the LAX or Burbank. Another factor you may want to think about is flying nonstop or having connecting flights. We prefer always to fly nonstop. And the reason being is we do not like to deal with potential airport delays or missed flights. I have traveled quite a bit in my life and have always tried to avoid connecting flights because I have missed so many of those connecting flights. And most recently, on a return trip from Disney World, we had a weather delay in Orlando and we missed our connecting flight and had to spend the night in the San Diego airport. And that trip turned into about a 32-hour trip to get to our home airport. So whenever possible, we try to avoid connecting flights and always fly nonstop. I would rather deal with 2 hours of traffic on the ground versus missing a connecting flight.
And one other thing to consider when booking your flights is the total amount of time. So for instance, if you could fly into LAX and fly and drive to Disneyland in 4 hours versus flying into John Wayne, but it would take you a total amount of time of 6 hours, including layovers and travel time from John Wayne to Disneyland, we would always choose the quicker route. So we would go with LAX, even though it is further away and you will be sitting in a car longer, total amount of time is shorter.
Now that we've talked briefly about each airport you can fly into, we'll talk about ground transportation. And first off, I did mention San Diego. Your real options are driving from San Diego to Anaheim or taking the Amtrak train. From John Wayne Airport, there is a public transportation option, and that is called EVE, and that is offered through ART or Anaheim Regional Transportation. Tickets are priced each way, and adults are $15. Children are $7.50, and children under 2 are free.
If you fly into Burbank, there is an option of taking the Amtrak train from Burbank to Anaheim to the Arctic station. We have tried this in the past, and unfortunately for us, it was not the best experience. The train was significantly delayed, and the total amount of time it took us from the airport to Anaheim was about 4.5 to 5 hours versus 2 hours if we had driven.
Another option we have done is a one-way car rental, and you ask, why would you do a one-way car rental? And the reason being is you do not want to incur the daily parking fee at your hotel. And then for us, we tend not to drive anywhere, and so we don't want to incur that daily car rental fee from the car rental company. And so one thing to be aware of is your travel time from the airport to the Anaheim area. Make sure you pay attention to what time the car rental office closes. There's a bunch of them that are right near all the hotels, and just make sure you can get there in time. And also factor in topping off the car with gas. The one advantage that you can have by taking a one-way car rental is you can go to the grocery store at your leisure, and if you have a little extra time, you can stop at the Citadel outlets or the outlets at Orange and do some extra shopping.
Up next are the ride-share options, Uber and Lyft. Now, Uber and Lyft do not provide car seats, and the driver has the discretion to allow you to install your own car seat or not. So just keep that in mind if you do have little kids, if you're planning on taking a ride-share. If you are flying into LAX, you will need to take the LA Exit shuttle to the rideshare parking lot, and that's where you will get your Uber or Lyft car. And we do have a video on that process, and we'll link it in the description below. And one more thing we wanted to point out about using rideshare, and this has happened to us numerous times, is the trip back from Anaheim to the airport might be a little bit trickier to get a driver, meaning we've had cars cancel on us when they drive up and see us standing there with our luggage, even when we've booked an Uber XL. In one instance, we had 2 drivers in a row cancel on us, and we were starting to freak out a little bit. So always plan some extra buffer time in case anything like that happens.
And now we're going to go on to the car services that we've used, and the first one is Midwell Shuttle. We had a great experience. We took Midwell Shuttle from LAX to Stovall's in Anaheim. We were picked up in a large passenger van so they can accommodate a large group. They should provide car seats, but double check with them in case that has changed. Did have a friend try to book them, and our friend is from Australia, and they had communications issues with Midwell and opted to use a different service.
Another service we have used 2 times for 2 round trips is Diamond Driver Guy. We really loved this service. The drivers are super friendly, the cars are immaculate. They pick you right up at the terminal, They offer a 30-minute shopping trip on your way in from the airport to your hotel, and I myself find that very handy because it's one less thing I have to worry about. I know I can just run into the store and grab what we need. I don't have to place a grocery order or worry about picking that up or doing any of that kind of thing. They also offer car seats, and we would use them again in a heartbeat. We'll link our review video in the description below.
Other car services in the area, we'll start off with the official recommended service from Disneyland, and that is Carmel Shuttle. There's Lansky, ExecuCar, and most recently we found out about LuxBus on our Facebook group. So if you have questions on Disneyland travel, join our Facebook group, which is linked in the description, and maybe we can help you out or one of our viewers can. When booking a car service, we do recommend checking the Yelp reviews, but you will find communication tends to be one of the biggest complaints with car services. And that's why we do recommend Diamond Driver Guy. Communication has always been spot on. We are on the airplane and we are texting our driver, and our driver is telling us, I'm waiting for you. I'm 5 minutes away from the airport. So once again, do check out Diamond Driver Guy. We highly recommend them.